I was expecting this to be an absolute garbage game. Well, it wasn't great, right? It was about the best the Giants could give us. We'll talk about the Giants, talk about these Steelers. We actually had to move Tracy up the rankings a bunch, of course. But first thing is, maybe we want to talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers. We were talking about regression, possibly hitting this offense previously. And at this point, I think it's a little harder to say that. I mean, you have yet again the Steelers offense with Russell Wilson looking great. With Russ, you have the 278 passing yards, get the passing touchdown off of only 28 pass attempts. I still want to reiterate, Russell Wilson doesn't have any rushing upside at this point of his career. So it's not like Russell Wilson himself is going to be a viable fantasy option outside of if you have the perfect matchup. Yes, if Russ gets to play up against Carolina, you go ahead and you roll with Russ. But going over to our rankings, I still view him just kind of as like a week-to-week streamer. Maybe we move Richardson behind him, but ultimately, I think if you are looking at all these quarterback rankings, outside of the top 16 or so players, I don't necessarily think any of these guys down here deserve to really be rostered unless you're picking them up for a singular week just because you like the matchup. So I'm not even going to sit here and stress about, oh my gosh, you have Jameis at 21. It doesn't matter. None of those guys are players that you should roster outside of picking him up to stream for a single week. I think Russ falls into that range, right? It doesn't really matter where you rank the dude. Now, going over to running back, this now back-to-back games where Najee Harris performs well. And I have a lot of Najee Harris in underdog drafts, so I'm actually really hoping Najee continues to do this. Obviously, get the 19 carries for the 114 rushing yards. Looks a lot better with Russell Wilson under center just because over the past 2 weeks, of course, this has been a much, much better offense. And any running back will be much better in a good offense in comparison to the worst offense that he had with Fields. But I do want to point out, if you're looking at the underlying usage here, Jalen Warren still definitely was involved. You had 12 opportunities going for Warren in comparison to a total of 14 opportunities for Najee. So Najee is the RB1 in this backfield, but it is still, a pseudo committee. Now, of course, any game where the Steelers are going to win, Najee Harris does look to be viable. And any games where the Steelers are possibly going to lose, Najee Harris at that point doesn't look super exciting. So I have him ranked in the same range as kind of those other backs like Ramondre Stevenson on Stevenson, and an environment where he looks decent. The Patriots win, Stevenson's going to look decent. And in an environment where the Patriots lose, Stevenson's going to look like garbage. We can go ahead and we can look at the trade finder and see if there are any interesting deals that you have surrounding Javonte Williams. I'm sorry, not Javonte Williams, Najee Harris. I apologize. So we'll go ahead and we will pull this up. We are only going to look at one quarterback, full PPR leagues, and 10 to 12 team leagues as well. You see this trade down here. Somebody traded Keenan Allen, Tyler Algier, Christian Watson for Najee and Noah Fant. Noah Fant's an absolute zero, but this is a reasonable price tag if you want a Najee. But then you look at some of these other deals. You were able to get Deebo Samuel by selling Najee and Purdy. I would take Deebo Samuel here by a mile. Najee for Cade Otton, kind of dependent on your team. Ridley and Najee versus Moss and Christian Watson. I'd rather have the Ridley and Najee side of this. Najee and Ridley versus Deontay. I think it's up to you. If you needed a running back, I could see you going with the Najee side. Jaden Reed, Najee versus Hopkins. Give me Najee and Reed. So honestly, a lot of these deals look relatively fair for Najee Harris. I do want to reiterate where we have them in my own rankings rest of season, where I am looking at Najee currently as that low-end RB2, high-end RB3, but definitely trending in the right direction, of course. And then with Jalen Warren's nothing more than a premium handcuff back. If Najee were to go down, Jalen Warren's probably really exciting. But with a healthy Najee Harris, I just simply don't have any interest. Now, going over to what we have at wide receiver. So the stat line for George Pickens doesn't look good, right? Pickens, you only get 5 targets, 4 receptions, 74 receiving yards. Pickens was this close to picking up 2 receiving touchdowns. George Pickens, honestly, could have had himself a massive day where you were looking at it in a completely different light. So maybe you were watching the World Series and you weren't watching this game. Then, yeah, at that point, you can go through and you can just maybe say, oh, you got to lower Pickens down. I still view Pickens as the guy that you're really going to consider for the flex spot every single week. If you're in a 2 wide receiver 1 flex league, if you're in a league where you have to start 3 receivers in a flex, then their Pickens is probably an every week starter for you. Whereas if you're in a format in which maybe you start 2 receivers, 2 flexes, their Pickens is an every week starter for you. So it really just does depend on the format that you're playing in. I don't think we really need to move Pickens up or down. Great game for Pittsburgh. I mean, here you do have a really good spot with Russ just continuing to play well, but it's not like Pickens dominates targets, doesn't have a great day for fantasy purposes, but like I said, was extremely close to having that blow-up performance. Looking at Pat Frymuth gives you nothing. So we cut Frymuth in the Flock League like 2 weeks ago. We used him as kind of a weekly streamer. Here, I think I could move Frymuth down behind a couple of these tight ends like Schultz and Zach Ertz, given the Stephon Diggs injury, and Zach Ertz just had 11 targets this past week. But I want to reiterate, I mean, down here, none of these tight ends are guys that you really should look to roster anyway. Like I said, I had Frymuth in the Flock League previously, but I decided to go ahead and cut him for Cole Kmet. And obviously, as we update these rankings, it should help you out in terms of figuring out what the best waiver wire options are for you if you have to submit your waivers tomorrow. If you needed to see like an interesting waiver wire tool, you can go over to the My Teams side of this for free on flockfantasy.com. If you play on Sleeper, ESPN, or Yahoo, you can link your fantasy football team for completely free. And then you're able to go through and you're able to see the best waiver wire pickups based off rest of season rankings, not just weekly projections. So we can go down and look at the league that I play in, right? Your boy's moving to 5-3 after this week. Couldn't be more excited. And then we can go and look at the best weekly pickups that I could have. So using this, I can already tell you right now what I'm going to be doing in my own league, and Hollywood Brown's on my IR, so ignore that. But I will be dropping Anthony Richardson, and I'm going to be going and picking up Caleb Williams. And then if I was to make any other move, the guy that I'd probably want on my waiver wire would be Gabe Davis, but I'll probably leave Gabe Davis out there myself. But my league waivers are extremely thin. In your league, maybe that there are a lot of players. So maybe, I don't know, you can just use this as confirmation if you wanted to drop Pat Frymuth and see if there was somebody that was a little bit more exciting than Frymuth for you. I do want to reiterate, this is completely free over there on flockfantasy.com. I'll leave a link in the comment section and the description if you wanted to check it out. But that's for if you play on Sleeper, ESPN, or Yahoo. None of the secondary receivers are interesting here at all in Pittsburgh. I don't want to waste a single second talking about them. Now, going over to what we have with the Giants. Looking at, okay, and this is something I got to talk about as well. We got Joshua saying, Gesicki has a great game. He should be higher. What I have noticed from YouTube comments this year is y'all react so much to a single game. One player has a good game that week, and all of a sudden they need to fly up 20 spots in the rankings, despite what we have seen throughout the entire season, despite what we have with years of a sample on that option. Like, realistically speaking, I know everybody wants to come out here and scream that we're too low on Najee because Najee had one good game. Remember, after the bad game Najee had earlier in the year, y'all were out in the live stream screaming that we were too high on him. I think you just kind of got to be a little bit realistic when you make these rest of season rankings and shouldn't be overreacting to a singular game. Going through and looking at what we have with the Giants. Daniel Jones wasn't startable before. You shouldn't have him on your roster before, shouldn't have him on your roster after. Nothing to talk about with Daniel Jones. Don't even have to update his ranking. The guy that we need to update his ranking with will be Tyrone Tracy. Dear God. So we previously had ranked Tracy if he was the starting running back in this offense, but I didn't know if it was a guarantee. You looked at Underdog Pickens. They had Tracy for like 60% of the backfield. Singletary at 40%. So I was going with Tracy. Oh, okay, well, he's probably the lead in the committee where he's going to see the majority of the work, but it's a bad offense. Now, Tracy gets absolutely everything. Now, yes, Tracy does get banged up at the end of the game. It will be something that we need to monitor. But with the concussion, maybe Tracy misses a singular week, right? So I actually am going to have to add another clip to the waiver wire video for tomorrow morning. And Devin Singletary is going to be an appealing waiver wire pickup if you needed a spot start in week 9 in a really good matchup. So it sucks that you're not going to have Tracy for maybe 1 week, but it's a concussion. It's not like he just tore his ACL or anything. And looking at Tracy, the man gets 20 carries, 145 rushing yards, and the rushing touchdown. He had the long rushing touchdown where the man looks like he's the only juice in this Giants offense outside of Malik Neighbors. Going down to the receiving usage, one thing that I do want to point out is you had 37 potential targets here in this offense, and Tracy only had 3 of them. So Tracy not really seeing a massive role as a receiver here, which is just noteworthy because if we look at Tracy, obviously if you drafted him in Underdog Best Ball drafts, congrats, super excited for you. He's going to crush it for you there at his cost. And if you picked up Tracy off the waiver wire, he looks like he'll probably crush it for you as well. But I do want to be realistic, right? Because Tracy comes out with the long rushing touchdown. He looks phenomenal on a Monday night game. But if we project this going into the future, if Tracy doesn't have a massive receiving role, he's a first and second down running back in a bad offense. And not just a bad offense, a horrendous offense. Like the Giants are going to be bums. Now, of course, knowing that he is going to have almost everything in this offense when healthy, we have to move him up dramatically. Because I think Tracy has more volume than Alexander Madison. Or I don't say more volume. I think he has more juice than Alexander Madison. Like previously, we had him right ahead of Madison because I go, okay, well, these are the lead backs in garbage offenses that have severely capped ceilings. But no, I mean, I think we can say Tracy with the juice that he showed is a little bit better than that. I would rather have Tracy over Dowdle. I'd rather have him over Etienne. I'd rather have him over Mason. I'd rather have him over Bigsby, Hubbard, Bucky. This is where things maybe get a little bit interesting. Obviously, it's very difficult to rank him alongside someone like Isaiah Pacheco, Jonathan Brooks, these complete mystery box backs where we have no idea when they'll come back in, but you want to say that they are more talented, blah, 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 blah. It's very difficult to compare him alongside those guys. So you know what? Let's even look at what we have with like Ramondre Stevenson, Nick Chubb, Najee Harris. I'd rather have Tracy over Chubb. I don't expect the Browns offense to be good going into the future. I know that they were just phenomenal against the Ravens, but it's a 1-game sample. I don't expect the Browns offense to be good. I don't expect the Pats offense to be good. At this point, Tracy looks like he has more juice than both those running backs. I think Najee's in a better offense. I think White has a larger receiving role. I think Javante's in a better offense with a larger receiving role. I think Chase Brown's in a better offense. So Tracy looks great. Just with the concussion, with the lack of the receiving usage, with how bad the offense is, I don't know if I'd put Tracy ahead of like Rachaad White or Javonte rest of season. Can y'all please spam the chat? Would you rather have Tracy or Najee? And I know everybody loves the TikTok clips. Everybody loves the Instagram reels with Jameis Winston. So everybody wants to scream at me that Jameis Winston's a great quarterback. Oh, dear God. It's frustrating. Realistically speaking, why do we get the Jameis Winston hive mind coming out when Jameis comes in and has a good game? Whereas if you're looking at like, I don't know, Marcus Mariota steps in for Jaden Daniels at the end of a game, and Marcus Mariota looks great. Nobody, same draft class, number 1 and number 2 overall pick. Why does everybody have to convince themselves that Jameis is great? The Chargers are favored over the Browns this week in Cleveland. But I know we have some people coming in with the memes of Jameis, but realistically, is it literally just because of Barstool? Everybody has to scream at me how good Jameis Winston is because of Barstool Sports. Okay, but anyway, Tracy, Najee. It looks like most people have Tracy over Najee. I think Tracy has more. I think the Steelers are in a better offense. I think Najee Harris is fully healthy. How about this? If we get the word with Tracy that he's good to go this week, I'm going to dramatically move him up these ranks. if Tracy is not going to be at risk of missing 1 week, 2 weeks with a concussion, keep in mind the Giants also are a team that is completely out of it. They haven't gone through their bye week either, so you're for sure not going to have that from Tracy. Going through and looking at the schedule in the future, you get Washington this week, then you get the Panthers matchup in 2 weeks. So, I mean, if he can play in that Panthers matchup, I would be ranking him as a high-end RB2 that week, just given how good it is, even if it is a Europe game. But I'm assuming he misses this week, maybe at risk to miss the week after, because you have the week 11 bye. So the Giants go, okay, well, we're not playing for anything. Are we going to risk our rookie running back coming back from a concussion in a lost season? Or just give him an extra week so we can get to the bye? There's a chance that he misses weeks 9, 10, and 11. So I'm going to be a little bit hesitant with our ranking with Tracy. I do want to reiterate, looks phenomenal in this game. The only drawback I possibly have is you have a target share less than 10%. You have him now dealing with a concussion. You have one of the worst offenses in the league. So Tracy looks great. I'm not going to go ahead and move him ahead of like Najee, Rashad White, Javonte, Chase Brown until we get word with the concussion here. Devin Singletary is a running back that's, where did we even have him before? We had him before this at like RB 46. I don't think I moved this. Obviously now Singletary looks like he could be a start against Washington and maybe the Panthers over the next 2 weeks, depending on the concussion news that you get with Tracy. Where in that case, I think I'd rather have Singletary over guys like Warren Eckler. But if Tracy's back next week, Singletary falls down these rankings. So we'll leave Singletary there in a gray zone. I just simply don't know where to put him yet until we get word with the Tracy concussion. Now, going over to what we have with the receivers here. Darius Slayton, yes, has a good game. And I already know people are going to scream going, Mason, you said to drop Darius Slayton. Darius Slayton's viable now, blah, blah, blah. Well, Slayton can have a good game. I just want to be realistic here. I want to spend some time with this because people will come out and scream at me. So let's pull up Darius Slayton from a points per game perspective so far this season. Darius Slayton from a points per game perspective is wide receiver 58. And a lot of that production came in the games where Malik Neighbors missed. Should you be running out to the waiver wire to pick up Darius Slayton just because he had 100 receiving yards and you recognize the name? No, you should not. The guy that you want here is Malik Neighbors. We already had abandoned ship on Wan'Dale Robinson. That ship had sailed. We had already plummeted him in the rankings. We will show the rankings on Wan'Dale real quick. I don't even show the ranking on Darius Slayton. Who gives a damn about Slayton? Don't pick him up. Wan'Dale was viable at some point here. Wan'Dale Robinson on the season was a top 5 receiver in targets. I actually have Wan'Dale in a lot of underdog drafts, so I hope he does well. Wan'Dale's wide receiver 31 from a points per game perspective. But the issue is obviously a lot of that came with no Malik Neighbors. So we had already had Wan'Dale Robinson down here at wide receiver 53. Just because my thought process is you're in a garbage offense. Neighbors is the dominant alpha. Neighbors going to have pretty much everything. So I don't want the second option in a garbage offense. I'm not having it. Now, of course, going over to Malik Neighbors, I don't have Malik Neighbors really at all in underdog drafts. I didn't draft him in the flock league. Malik Neighbors in underdog drafts going at the end of round 2. I thought that this was going to be a garbage offense. All the math points out to wide receivers in garbage offenses not doing anything in fantasy. Now, of course, Malik Neighbors is a special player. You knew Malik Neighbors was a special talent coming into the NFL draft. That doesn't change at all. Coming into tonight, we had Malik Neighbors at wide receiver 8 in our rest of season ranks. We are looking at Neighbors right behind guys like Amon-Ra St. Brown, Nico Collins. We had Neighbors right ahead of Puka Nacua, Drake London. My thought process with Neighbors is the man's going to dominate targets. We already knew that. It's a bad offense. We already knew that. You see 13 targets, 7 receptions, 72 receiving yards. Like if you're playing in a full PPR format, the volume's going to be great. He'll get there with volume and volume alone. If you're playing in a non-PPR league, you're probably bummed because you don't have touchdown upside in a garbage offense. So for this, I know everybody wants to come out and scream that we need to move Puka and London ahead. London needs to go ahead of him. Blah, blah, blah. If you take a step back, Malik Neighbors still on the year, or at least coming into this game as wide receiver 3 from a points per game perspective. Wide receiver 3 overall. We're already putting a discount on him here at wide receiver 8. London's been wide receiver 10 from a points per game perspective this season. So I honestly don't think I really change this. I think I'll leave Neighbors as is. We already knew who he was. He is potentially going to lead the NFL in targets per game. I mean, at least that's how it's trending towards right now. But the touchdown upside's capped because it's a garbage offense. But I think we talked about everybody here. I do want to reiterate, obviously, I'll continue to update the rankings as we get more and more news about Tyrone Tracy. It's just difficult for me to rank Tracy right now with the potential concussion and us not knowing if or how many games he could potentially miss. If you wanted to track our updated rankings, obviously all the experts are updating their rankings on the site very, very often. This is flockfantasy.com. My rankings in particular would be behind a paywall, but if you are a paid member of the site, just go hit the sort by Mason Dodd, and then you can sort by my rest of season rankings, of course. And then you can go back and forth between, I want to see Mason's, I want to see the expert average. Maybe you go, okay, I also watch Corey from Fantasy Stock Exchange. You can go ahead and sort by Corey's rankings, whatever you are looking for. But also, if you were looking for a free tool that I think could really help you out a ton, and also it's just awesome to be able to see your league itself with updated power standings. If you play on Sleeper, ESPN, or Yahoo, you should be able to link your team for completely free over there on flockfantasy.com. And then also, I would highly recommend using the waiver wire setup that we have, where if you go down and look at the best, you can look at the best waiver wire players that are available in your league in particular, sorted by rest of season rankings, not just weekly projections. Because obviously the way that ESPN sorts it, the way that Yahoo sorts it, the way that Sleeper sorts it kind of sucks if you're trying to figure out who you should pick up on the waiver wire with your league. I'd highly recommend taking advantage of this. Like I said, it's free. Also, free trade finder over there on flockfantasy.com as well. If you were wanting to see, I need to see what Tyrone Tracy is getting traded for right now. You can go through and see, the trades that involve Tyrone Tracy today. Braylon Allen was traded for him. Jordan Addison was traded for him. Somebody traded Higgins for Tracy Tolbert. Somebody traded Mooney for Tracy. If you needed to ever check in on a price tag for a player, or obviously you can go check out the trade calculator for free. All I would ask is if you're going to use the trade calculator, put in your league settings so you know that you are looking at the right league. And then you could go through and you could say, I want to see what does a Tyrone Tracy versus, Wan'Dale Robinson look like? Two players that were obviously in this game. Or let's go Malik Neighbors if I know how to type. I trade away Tracy. I receive Neighbors. I wonder what this is. We're robbing them. Of course we're robbing them. And then also you can see all the trades underneath where you add Neighbors and Tracy being involved in a deal. All of this is completely free for you over on flockfantasy.com. We put a lot of work into building it out for you. Really hope that you can take advantage of it and it helps you out. I'll leave the link to that in the description and comment section. And if you wanted to, of course, catch what we said throughout this entire video, you can just start at the beginning. But much love. Really do appreciate you and really hope we get to see you out with the live stream tomorrow.